Alright, what's going on, guys? It's been a while since we've sat down here together, so I hope you're having a good summer. I hope everything's going well, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I wanted to talk a little bit about Alaska. Not the US state as much as I'd like to visit someday, but rather the airline that serves Alaska, Alaska Airlines, and their loyalty program, Alaska Airlines Mileage Plan, which represents one of the best loyalty programs that Canadians can use to travel the world, and also has one of the credit cards that's the easiest in Canada for racking up the points. That's the one. Look at that. Do you see that? That's the MBNA Alaska Airlines MasterCard, and it gives you between 20,000 and 30,000 Alaska miles when you sign up. Now, the reason that I wanted to talk about this card and this loyalty program in this video is because there's some upcoming changes with Alaska Airlines joining the Oneworld Airline Alliance. And so there's likely to be some changes on the loyalty program and some changes to the way that we earn and redeem miles. So I thought it would be interesting to revisit some of the strategies with the MBNA Alaska MasterCard and then offer you some of my predictions for what might happen to the Alaska loyalty program as the airline looks to join the Oneworld Airline Alliance by the end of 2020. Now, we've actually covered the credit card and the loyalty program in a previous video back when I used to have that gorgeous yellow couch in my living room. May it rest in peace. So I'd consider this video to be building upon that video, and I'd encourage you to go back and watch that video if you haven't already seen it. Now, before we get started, if you're enjoying these videos and if you think I do a good job of covering the cards and the programs and the strategies and helping everybody travel more for less, then please go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe to the Prince of Travel YouTube channel. That really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm and tells YouTube to share the video with even more viewers so that everybody else can travel more for less just like we do. Especially if you hit like and subscribe right now just as the video is starting. And with that said, let's get into it. Alright guys, so in the previous video on Alaska, we did talk about the MBNA Alaska Airlines MasterCard here in Canada, but in this video, let's go a little bit more in depth and talk about the card's, sign-up bonus, its suite of features, and then some of the strategies to keep in mind when you're applying for this card. The first thing to know, like many other credit card products out there, the MBNA Alaska actually comes in two different flavors or two different versions. There's the World Elite version, which requires a minimum annual personal income of $80,000 or a minimum household income of $150,000 to qualify. And there's the Platinum Plus version, which has no income requirement. Now, these two versions are largely the same, which is why we generally think of the MBNA Alaska as one credit card product rather than two separate credit card products. Now, the main important difference is that the World Elite version comes with a sign-up bonus of 30,000 Alaska miles compared to the Platinum Plus version's 20,000 miles. The World Elite has an annual fee of $99 compared to $75 on the Platinum Plus. And there's a bunch of, benefits associated with the World Elite card that you won't find on the Platinum Plus card. Now, I wanted to start by highlighting the fact that obviously the sign-up bonuses on both the World Elite and the Platinum Plus are very much worthwhile compared to the annual fee that you're paying, because remember that Alaska miles are very valuable, usually valued at least 2 cents per mile, if not more. So 30,000 miles, you can think of it as worth at least $600. 20,000 miles worth at least $400. So these easily offset the $99 and $75 annual fees that you'll be paying on the card. But to sweeten the deal even further, you can actually apply for the MBNA Alaska MasterCards through the Great Canadian Rebates cashback portal, and you'll earn $50 in cashback when you get approved after applying through this channel. So that reduces your first year's net annual fee to $49 and $25 respectively on the World Elite and the Platinum Plus, which is obviously an insanely good deal for the sign-up bonuses that you're getting. Speaking of the sign-up bonuses on these cards, technically, c'est pas disponible au Québec. Okay, they're not supposed to be available in Quebec. However, a few Quebecers' experiences indicate that it's more dependent on the specific application form that you pull up instead of actually the Quebec address that you put in as your own address, if you know what I mean. Alright, so now let's move on to some of the other key features of the card. For both the World Elite and the Platinum Plus, the earning rates is 3 Alaska Airlines miles per dollar spent on Alaska Airlines flights and 1 Alaska mile per dollar spent on everything else. So in general, I don't think it's the strongest earning rate for your everyday purchases, but I do think that the MBNA Alaska is a great MasterCard option to keep in your wallet alongside the more powerful American Express cards out there. And that's especially the case if you're shopping with those retailers that only take MasterCard and they don't even take Visa. So for example, I know Costco is a very popular one, and so is No Frills here in Canada. So in those cases, you really want to keep a strong MasterCard in your wallet, and the Alaska Airlines MasterCard by MBNA is a very good choice. Now in terms of the other perks and benefits on this card, well, both the World Elite and the Platinum Plus version come with what's known as Alaska's famous companion fare. Now that's exactly what it sounds like. It's a companion fare, which means that when you're booking round-trip travel on Alaska Airlines for 2 people, then you can pay full price for the first passenger, and then the second passenger only pays $99 plus taxes and fees for the round trip. So this companion fare is going to be more useful to you if you live in a city that Alaska Airlines themselves actually flies to. So for Canadians, that's going to be primarily over on the West Coast. I know that Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, Victoria, and Kelowna are, I believe, the 5 cities in Canada that Alaska Airlines serves from their hub airport in Seattle. For what it's worth, I hear that Alaska Airlines is actually a decent airline to fly with. I hear they've got a decent product even in economy class with decent service. I don't know, I've never flown with them myself. I've only just redeemed hundreds of thousands of Alaska miles for travel on their partners. And while we're on the topic of flying with Alaska Airlines, let's talk about the one major benefit that's offered by the World Elite version of the card that's not offered by the Platinum Plus version, and that's going to be the free first checked bag on Alaska Airlines for the cardholder themselves, as well as 6 passengers on the same reservation. All right, so we've basically covered everything you need to know about the MBNA Alaska Airlines MasterCard. Now let's talk about some of the strategies when applying for this card to rack up the bonuses as effectively as possible. MBNA is one of the more particular issuers in Canada when it comes to approving your applications, and especially when it comes to looking at the number of recent inquiries on your credit report. With MBNA, there is an unofficial rule of sorts known as the 5-6 rule. Now, this is kind of in the mold of the 524 rule by Chase in the US, but it's not as well documented as the 524 rule, and it's more of a guideline than a hard and fast rule like 524 is. Basically, it seems that MBNA is more likely to reject your application if you've had 5 or more hard credit inquiries on your TransUnion credit file over the past 6-month period, hence the 5-6 rule. If you find yourself in this situation, then it might actually be a good idea to focus on some of the other credit issuers that pull from Equifax instead of TransUnion, such as TD or CIBC, until enough time passes that you no longer have 5 or more credit inquiries on your TransUnion credit file, and you're more likely to be approved by MBNA. Having said that, there's no major reason for worrying too much about MBNA rejecting your application at the first pass, because even though they're relatively conservative about approving and rejecting applications the first time around, MBNA is generally pretty happy to do a reconsideration on your rejected credit card application. And in particular, even though MBNA may have rejected your application for new credits, if you call up the credit department and say that, I'm not looking for new credits, I'm just looking to be approved for this new card, and I have an existing MBNA card with an existing credit limit, am I able to split off that credit limit in order to approve this new card? In most cases, they're happy to do so. So that brings us to the general strategy for applying for MBNA cards, which is after you've gotten your first MBNA Alaska Airlines MasterCard with the 30,000 or 20,000 miles sign-up bonus, instead of closing it after you're done with it, you want to downgrade it to a no-fee MBNA product so that you're keeping that existing MBNA credit limit around for the future in case you get rejected on a future application and need to split off that credit limit in order to get your rejected application pushed through as an approval. All right, so we've talked about the MBNA Alaska Airlines MasterCard in depth. We've talked about some of the strategies that are particular to MBNA as an issuer. Now let's move on to the second part of this video, where I wanted to talk more about the Alaska Airlines Mileage Plan loyalty program and how it might change with Alaska Airlines joining the Oneworld Airline Alliance in late 2020. Alaska Airlines joining Oneworld has been something that has been talked about in aviation circles for a very long time. Alaska Airlines has never been a part of an airline alliance before, and because they already partner with so many Oneworld airlines independently, it's been speculated that if there was one airline alliance that Alaska was most likely to join, then Oneworld would be it. And back in February, we learned that Alaska planned to join Oneworld sometime in 2021, but right now, sort of because of the pandemic, because of what's going on, that process seems to have been fast-tracked to the end of 2020 instead. Now, for those of us who collect Alaska miles through the credit cards, this type of news is something to pay close attention to because such a major change for the airline necessarily means that there's going to be changes to the loyalty program as well. And as most of us will be familiar with, whenever there's major changes to a loyalty program, it's more likely than not that those changes will be negative from a value perspective. That's just how it's always been over time in the loyalty space. So I think it's important to say here that right now we have very little concrete information to go on about what changes are coming to the Alaska loyalty program. We've heard very little from Alaska themselves beyond, we're looking forward to joining Oneworld in late 2020, and we will continue to provide value to our members when earning and redeeming miles on Oneworld flights. I mean, standard boilerplate corporate stuff. So having said that, I'll offer you here some of my predictions about what changes I think might be coming to the Alaska loyalty program when they join Oneworld in late 2020. And I'll also offer you some of my rationale for why I'm making these predictions, but keeping in mind that they're only predictions at the end of the day. I think I'm going to break this down into 4 general predictions. The first is, since Alaska Airlines has been an independent airline loyalty program up until now, it's had independent agreements and mileage redemption charts with each of its partner airlines. And I think that's going to be replaced with a unified award chart, at least for all of the Oneworld partner airlines. So right now, Alaska Airlines charges different amounts of miles depending on whether you want to fly, let's say, Cathay Pacific or Japan Airlines or Fiji Airways or Finnair or Qantas. But since all of these airlines are part of Oneworld, I think in the future there's going to be a unified Oneworld award chart that applies to all of these airlines. And I say that because that's kind of the norm when you join an airline alliance, right? Because whether you're part of Star Alliance or Oneworld or SkyTeam, if you're part of the alliance, then you usually have a unified award chart for redeeming your own miles for travel on the partner airlines. And I think that if we do see a unified Oneworld award chart, then one of the positives from that could be that you can now redeem Alaska miles for travel on different Oneworld partners on the same ticket. So maybe we'd be able to combine Cathay Pacific with Japan Airlines on the same Alaska Airlines redemption, which right now is not possible because of all these independent agreements that Alaska has stricken with each of their separate partners. Now, my second prediction is that with any new redemption structure that we see, we're also likely to see the end of some of the best sweet spots in the current Alaska Miles program. You can go back to our other video on Alaska Miles where we talk about some of those sweet spots in depth. But for example, I'm talking about redeeming 70,000 Alaska miles for Cathay Pacific First Class from North America to Hong Kong, having a stopover in Hong Kong for however long you'd like 2 weeks or a month or something like that, and then flying Cathay Pacific Business Class from Hong Kong all the way to South Africa, all for 70,000 Alaska miles. That's an incredible redemption that I'm pretty sure will be going away if they change the award charts. And the reason I say that really goes back to the long-term truth that loyalty programs inevitably devalue over time. And this particular sweet spot of 70,000 miles for Cathay Pacific First Class and Business Class to South Africa has been around for at least 5 years, right? And it's really no longer in keeping with some of the other price points that other loyalty programs among Oneworld airlines would charge for a similar redemption. So with any new redemption structure that comes into place, I wouldn't be surprised if some of these more generous sweet spots were devalued or nudged up a little bit slightly in terms of the price point, the number of Alaska miles that's required for that redemption, just to bring things more in line with the rest of the market that the loyalty program is competing in. All right, so my first 2 predictions were about the redemption charts. Prediction the third has to do with Alaska Airlines' current network of global airline partners and which of these partners might remain partners after the airline joins Oneworld, and which partnerships might not be likely to last for very long after that. Like I mentioned earlier, a good handful of Alaska's existing partner airlines are already part of the Oneworld Alliance, so those partnerships will definitely remain in place. It's really the non-Oneworld partnerships like Emirates or Korean Air or Singapore Airlines that might be phased out with Alaska Airlines joining Oneworld. My general prediction for Alaska's non-Oneworld partnerships is that the partnerships with the airlines who they themselves are not part of any alliance are more likely to stay compared to the partnerships with airlines who are part of a rival alliance like Star Alliance or SkyTeam. So for example, Emirates and Hainan Airlines are not part of any airline alliance, and I could see Alaska Airlines keeping those partnerships around even after they join Oneworld, maybe with a bit of renegotiation on, the earning and redeeming rules, but still keeping them within their partnership network. In comparison, I think that Alaska's partnership with Singapore Airlines and Star Alliance and Korean Air and SkyTeam are less likely to remain in place in the long run. And I say that simply because ultimately it's very rare that you see two airlines and two separate alliances maintaining a full partnership with earning and redemption capabilities. And I think it's quite likely that as a criteria for joining Oneworld, Alaska Airlines might be asked to phase out these partnerships. And that would be a shame because Alaska Miles is actually one of the few partners that can access a greater amount of award space on Singapore Airlines' business class and first class flights. But who knows, maybe there will be a new program coming along sometime soon to address that gap. Anyway, those are my predictions about the partners, and my last prediction is going to be that Alaska Airlines will do everything they can to maintain some of their more generous policies that they currently have, such as the ability to have a stopover on a one-way redemption. And I say that because, in general, Alaska Airlines is known for being, as customer-friendly as possible among the major US airlines. They're a smaller player in the US. They know that they've had to carve out a bit of a niche market in terms of their loyalty program, and they know that their members have grown loyal over time to earning and redeeming Alaska Miles, in part because of these very special features, such as the stopover on a one-way flight. So I have faith that Alaska will be doing their best to maintain some of the best parts of their program, even as they transition into full Oneworld membership. So those are my high-level predictions for the Alaska program as we head into the end of 2020 and as the airline looks to join Oneworld. And with some unfavorable changes looking quite likely to happen in my view, now's the time to start thinking about redeeming your Alaska Miles for the best sweet spots under the current program. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if so, please do hit the like button and subscribe to the Prince of Travel YouTube channel. Just click the subscribe button below the video. And let me know in the comments, have you implemented the strategies that we've talked about for the MBNA Alaska Airlines MasterCard, and what do you make of my predictions for the future of the Alaska Mileage program? Do you agree with my predictions, or do you think there's going to be a massive devaluation across the board? Let me know, and I'll see you in the next video. Speaking of the sign-up bonuses on these cards, technically,
Oh my life.
Are you filming a video right now?
Uh-huh.
Oh, like in this very moment.
Yeah.
Please look.